Kurenai and Asuma walked into the medic bay and walked until they found the section set up for Team 8. Hinata was unconscious with the battle wear clear on her person. Kiba wasn't in the room, possibly still being actively worked on by the medics. Shino was in the room, though sitting away from Hinata's bed in quiet contemplation. As the two Jonin got closer, he looked up at them through his sunglasses.
"Kurenai-sensei, Asuma-sensei,"
he said in an even-toned greeting. Kurenai gave Shino a smile and walked over to him, putting a hand on his shoulder as she kneeled down to pet the whimpering Akamaru, who had been sitting by the chair.
"Are you alright, Shino?"
she asked in a concerned tone. A nod came from the young Aburame.
"I am uninjured, Kurenai-sensei. Do not worry about me."
He then spared a glance over to where his female teammate lay asleep.
"The others, though, weren't as lucky as myself."
"How are they?" Asuma asked, feeling a bit of concern himself. Hey, they were all Leaf Ninja. His team and their team were friends and classmates in the academy, and his comrade Kurenai was their sensei. He could show some care. He even put out his cigarette before entering the room. That was how much he cared.
"Hinata will be fine with a day's rest, they say. A little sore, but nothing more,"
Shino said informatively before his eyebrows furrowed.
"Kiba, on the other hand, needed to undergo intensive treatment, but he should be able to leave once the exams end. They say we should watch out for the atmosphere shift once we leave, and that he should be checked out upon his return to the Leaf."
"That's good," Kurenai said, sighing in relief at the same time. The brutal kick from Fu to Kiba was exceptionally violent, and he had been completely unable to protect himself whatsoever. She noticed the stoic boy shift slightly in his chair, and while for a normal person, it could have been just that, for Shino, it might as well have just been letting out a long sigh.
"Shino, what's wrong?" I'm sorry, Kurenai-sensei,"
Shino said.
"I wasn't strong enough to win or keep them safe."
Asuma stepped in front of Shino and smiled at him. "It was your first exam, kid, and you're just a rookie. You outdid hundreds of others, and you just got unlucky with the team you ran up against. All you can do is prepare for the next time. Those weren't normal Genin."
"Everything will be fine, Shino,"
Kurenai said reassuringly.
"Once you heal up, we'll get right back to work. Now, would you like to head up and watch the rest of the day's fights? You can go with Asuma."
Shino thought about it for a moment before shaking his head in the negative.
"No, I believe it would be better for me to stay here in case Hinata wakes up, or Kiba is returned from his treatment."
Asuma nodded and turned to leave with a wave. "I'll be heading back up and leave you with your team then, Kurenai. Make sure they get some rest after all that." Kurenai nodded and went to go find a seat to join Shino.
"Waterfall brought out a Jinchuriki,"
A said in the aftermath of the last battle.
"and a user of their forbidden jutsu as well. They certainly went all out for this exam, didn't they?"
"It's meant to show a village's ability and power for the future, so I don't see a reason not to," the Kage said as a method of reasoning. "Jinchuriki can be Genin as well. As a matter of fact, a lot of them don't rank that high in my experience. The highest ranked one in memory is our absent colleague, the Mizukage, Yakuda." Onoki let out a laugh.
"And you see what he's doing, don't you? Killing Keke users. He's touched in the head."
Hiruzen personally wanted to get off the subject, because the topic of a Jinchuriki always went down an ugly road as a conversational topic. It was just inevitable.
"I believe next up is the new hidden village of sound."
The attempt at switching topics worked as the Kage responded. "Yes, the village only sent one team and they made it all this way. I almost had a meeting with the leader of this village a few months ago." Hiruzen raised an eyebrow at this.
"Almost? You mean you didn't meet with their leader?"
"I'm afraid not, Lord Hokage," the Kage said with a shake of his head. A representative from that village would not divulge the identity of his leader, nor was he very forthcoming with the general locale of the village. I did not trust a meeting with such a figure that deemed himself Sound Shadow. I'm afraid the sand is just as in the dark on the village as everyone else."
"Oto Kage,"
A said before letting out a laugh.
"Someone is certainly quite sure of themselves in their village, aren't they?"
Competitor's box.
"I can't believe it,"
Ino said quietly now that Fu and Dodobo were back in the waiting area with the rest of them.
"I can't believe that Hinata, Kiba, and Shino were beaten like that. And another Jinchuriki?"
She finished with a hissing whisper.
"Do we even know how to deal with the first one we found out about yet?"
She asked, looking over at Shikamaru.
"I'm working on it,"
Shikamaru said, thinking tediously. The proverbial smoke was pouring from his poor overworked brain.
"I need more time. We need to win the next round first. Then I'll have all night to actually think of something. And I'll know more about both of them as they advance."
Shikamaru had directly instructed them all not to go jackhammer until it was necessary. In all honesty, the stone team from the first round weren't that difficult to defeat at all. Naruto probably could have done it by himself, or with only one of them with him at the most. But that wouldn't have shown good judgment. Thus, they would not have been promoted just from that overwhelming show of force. Now though, with the knowledge of two Jinchuriki in the exams, and knowing the caliber of the opponents they were to face next round, they wouldn't have much of a choice in the matter. Naruto was looking over at Fu, who was leaning against a wall, looking out onto the field, not paying anyone else any mind.
"She was so angry about being revealed to be a Jinchuriki. She even cried for a second. So I'm not the only one that doesn't like being one.
What? Naruto said abruptly, getting shaken back into focus by Ino, who was looking at him curiously.
What's up, Ino? Kibo's really hurt out there,
Ino said, rubbing her arm sheepishly.
I think this is really the first time that I'm getting the point of how dangerous these exams are. Even Hinata took a beating up there. I didn't think I'd even see her fight, let alone take that kind of punishment.
Naruto frowned at remembering what had happened.
She went right at that Fu girl, though.
It was pretty surprising. Lady Hinata's spirit may have been impressive, but without the talent to back up that fire, it was her fate to fail. Neji interjected as he walked past Team 10.
No one was talking to you,
Shikamaru said to Neji once he saw Naruto clench his fist slightly.
Honestly, there's no need to try and start a troublesome situation for no reason.
Trying to be the voice of reason was such a pain in the ass. Neji turned toward Shikamaru with a smirk. It is just the truth. It is not my problem that your teammate cannot accept his own fated status as a failure. He must sympathize with Lady Hinata's plight to try and prove herself. Is that it? Naruto growled at Neji and made a step forward before Shikamaru spoke up again.
Well, if Naruto's a failure, then what am I?
You are merely a slacker, Neji explained, calmly crossing his arms over his chest. This has no bearing on your fate, though. You are destined for the future of mediocrity, not necessarily failure.
So are you saying that I'm destined to be mediocre because I slack, or I'm destined to slack because I'm mediocre?
Shikamaru asked Neji with a raised eyebrow.
Because if it's the first one, I can stop slacking if I felt the need to. So would that make me extraordinary? Or if I was just born awesome, then wouldn't my slacking not matter? What's the point of trying to be great if it's your fate? Won't it just happen anyway? There's so many places I can go with this. I just really want an answer, though.
A small smile came to Shikamaru's face.
You sounded so much like you knew what you were talking about. So, how about it?
Neji could of course tell Shikamaru was poking fun. Thus, he didn't even bother responding. He merely walked along away from Team 10. Naruto was more than happy to see him leave, and then looked down to his fist to see that Ino had managed to loosen one and get her hand to wrap around his. Probably to keep him stepping forward to smack Neji one, something that would have gotten them disqualified. The understanding smile he got from Ino managed to calm him down even more than Shikamaru shooing away Neji did.
Sorry about that. Thanks, Ino-chan. Shikamaru,
I was really about to hit that jerk.
Naruto punched his palm.
You know what? I'm gonna stomp Neji's ass, and I'm not gonna stop till I'm wearing socks made of dried
Okay, whatever. Just be cool.
Shikamaru said in an advisory manner, ignoring the rather graphic threat.
If it's really that big of a deal to you, then all I have to do is wait till next round. Until then, it's time for the next fight. It's Team 7 up against the Hidden Sound.
Come on, Goty-kun! It's Sasuke-kun's turn!
Ino said suddenly at the reminder of the next match as she dragged Naruto over to the railing to watch, cutting Shikamaru off mid-sentence.
I wonder what he learned over the last month.
With a sigh, Shikamaru tripped his hands into his pants pockets and walked over to watch the fight as well. Playing straight man to Naruto and Ino's over-the-top natures was a tiring endeavor, at least for him anyway. In a separate box seating area, Gato looked rather unpleased as he gazed down at the field. An older batch of Hidden Stone Genin that he had given more than ample monetary motivation to perform their job failed to kill even one of Team 10. The Leaf Squad didn't even find it necessary to resort to killing one of them to survive the battle. Oh well, he still had one chance left at exacting some kind of revenge on one of the Genin teams that screwed him over. His sound associate assured him that his Genin were more than capable of accomplishing their goals. All the work he'd gotten out of the Hidden Sound had been proven in the past, and the quote-unquote Oto Kage had assured Gato that his Genin team would be going for nothing less than the kill against Team 7. On the field stood Sasuke, Choji, and Sakura, facing off with a mummy-looking Dosu and his partners that looked quite confident. Ken seemed to be looking at Sakura as if she would walk right through her, something that earned her some measure of ire from the pink-haired girl. Zaku just looked at Choji and couldn't stop chuckling, especially since Choji was still eating chips at the time. The look on Sasuke's face was cool and calm by design, but the fact was that he was extremely excited to finally get his own fight out of the way. He barely registered Sakura asking him which side of the coin he wanted. Tails. The coin was sent up and landed heads up. Thus, the pick was sent to Team Dosu.
One-on-one matches.
Ken and Zaku smirked at that. The chance of getting a kill in one-on-one matches was higher than in team battle, where teammates could save others. Fine, Sasuke said, not caring too much one way or the other how he got to fight, as long as he provided the opportunity to do so. The two teams headed off on their own to decide who would be the first to fight whom on the Sound team. So, who wants to test the water? He didn't have any problems with going first. It might make things go faster, but it was about more than him in this instance.
This is my chance,
Sakura thought to herself before taking a deep breath.
I'll do it,
she volunteered with a serious look on her face. Choji stopped eating for a moment to look at her in surprise. What exactly had he missed when he'd been training with his dad? This was certainly new. It was usually either Sasuke or him who went in to fight first. It was kind of the reason he had become more confident in his own abilities. Are you sure, Sakura? Sasuke or I could fight first if you aren't.
I'm sure, Choji,
Sakura said resolutely before putting a smile on her face.
I've got to stop following along sometime, don't I? I can do it.
She turned towards Sasuke to see if he would offer any sort of dispute towards her fighting first. Sasuke merely gave her a normal, even-tempered look, only this one came with a nod of seemingly appreciative nature. Go on then, if that's what you want. That nod was more or less as close as anyone was going to get to hearing Sasuke say I believe in you. At least as close as anyone was going to hear in this century. On the other hand though, from their area off away from the other side of the field, Dosu managed to somehow hear every word that was being said over on Team 7's side, over the low waiting rumble of the crowd.
It seems the little girl wants to play Kunoichi and go first.
I'll take her then, Ken said, flipping her very long black hair back.
Someone has to put the princess in her place.
With that, she turned and strode comfortably out to face Sakura, this time on the stone bridge spanning the stream of the arena. She looked over the younger girl and scoffed.
Are you sure you want to fight me, sweetie? You might mess up your manicure.
Sakura let out a humorless laugh with an unamused smile on her face.
Oh, as long as I couldn't mess up your face too, I don't think I mind too much.
Jeez, catfight.
Genma thought to himself before shaking that thought out of his head.
Kami, what's wrong with me? You're like 15 years younger than me.
Clearing his mind of the previous thought, Genma started announcing. First round match, fight 1. Haruno Sakura of the Leaf versus Kensuchi of the Sound. Begin! Sakura drew a kunai while Ken a trio of Senbone. Both of them jumped away from the other, thinking their opponent would throw their weapons. When nothing initially happened, Sakura took it upon herself to act first, and quickly used her free hand to throw shuriken at Ken, which she easily dodged. Ken responded in kind with her own attack of Senbone, one of which came close to hitting Sakura as it bounced off the surface of the stone bridge near her leg once Sakura turned to run.
You need more than cookie cutter academy crap to beat me.
Chasing someone was such a pain, but if Sakura was going to run, the fight wasn't going to end until she ended it herself. As she neared the forested section of the field, Sakura made a quick set of hand seals,
Clone Jutsu!
making several copies of herself that split off and headed into the forest in an attempt to confuse Ken. Sakura already had her plan set out in mind. It wasn't like a forested environment was foreign to Ken at all. Thus, she had no problems with the shift in combat zone. As far as she was concerned, it was just slowly attempt to throw her off guard.
Just because you're a leaf ninja doesn't mean you stand a ghost of a chance in this place with me.
You sure do talk a lot.
Sakura's voice was thrown through the area to reach Ken's ears as she entered the foliage. A simple trick. It seemed like all Sakura could do to fight were simple tricks.
You know, your rookie friends that won their first fight earlier might have done nothing but run away until the very end, but at least they made it interesting. Do you really think I couldn't tell which you was the real one?
She asked before the sound of a cord snapping directed her attention down to a broken wire.
No, I didn't think you could, because you didn't.
A series of kunai flew from the trees at Ken, forcing her to dive out of the way to dodge.
That was too easy. No, I was supposed to jump this way.
As she thought that, a log swung down from the branches directed at her. Ken jumped over it to stick to the surface of a nearby tree that the log slammed into, dislodging her and knocking her to the ground.
That trajectory was dead on. How'd she set it up that well with less than a minute?
Sakura jumped out from a place of hiding with the kunai still in hand and landed on the ground with barely a sound before taking the opportunity to rush Ken directly. The slight noise provided by the quiet footfall told Ken where Sakura was, however, and the sound Kunoichi was quite angry with her at the moment. Ken glared deeply at Sakura before throwing more Senbone at her.
Once I dodge these, she won't have any time to grab any more, and she won't have any weapons that I can see either.
Sakura thought as she moved towards the side, avoiding the weapons.
Alright, now let's...
She stopped in her tracks and fell backwards, Senbone stuck in her abdomen. Luckily, she wasn't hitting a soft spot, though it still hurt damnably.
What? I dodged them. So sorry.
Ken said sarcastically as she got back up off the ground.
But you dodged the ones with the bells, sweetie.
She pointed where her discarded Senbone had wound up, and Sakura saw that the small bells had been tied onto the ends of them.
I threw the ones without bells to attract your attention so you wouldn't react to the second set that didn't have them. Shadow Shuriken.
Shikamaru and Naruto's eyes turned to Ino, who was watching the battle with her cheek in her hand and her fingertips drummed with the railing. She wasn't even dignifying her teammates by paying attention to the fact that they were looking at her. She did manage to speak though.
That doesn't mean that she's better than me with Senbone. Her aim is terrible. She just has a trick. A trick that I'm gonna steal when I find out a better way to do it.
Shikamaru shrugged at the idea.
Well, would fit in with the theme we seem to have with shadow name techniques.
A thoughtful look came onto Naruto's face. I know a move that's kinda like that. Maybe it works the same. I've never actually used it before, so I don't know. Ino turned towards him with a hopeful look in her eyes that got him to back up a step. I will teach you after the exams are over? Ino nodded happily and turned back towards the fight, getting a sigh of relief out of Naruto. Shikamaru laughed and made a sound of a whiff, thus getting Naruto to glare at him.
Oh, don't give me that look. You know it's true.
Shikamaru let out a sigh of his own and shook his head.
We all are.
He said in a disenfranchised manner.
Come on, forehead!
Ino yelled down to Sakura.
Don't lose like that! If you can't beat her, then you'll never even touch me!
Ken heard Ino's attempt to motivate Sakura and turned to look and scoff at the blonde girl.
So I guess being a loud, fake Kunoichi just runs rampant through the least ranks, huh? How could weak girls like you think you could ever win here?
She finished, throwing more Senbon at Sakura in an attempt to finish her off. The needles hit Sakura before in a puff of smoke, a log lay on the ground in her place. Sakura had made the hand seals for the substitution while Ken had been busy with her attention turned towards Ino. As Ken started looking around for Sakura, the trees around her began to shake off a large amount of leaves due to movement.
So now you're a squirrel. I guess you would be a rodent, wouldn't you?
The leaves around Ken slowly began to change in appearance from leaves to cherry blossom petals, and as they fell around her, they began to cut her. So this was Sakura's trap. Ken wasn't about to stay there if that were the case, and she made to run out of the falling cherry blossoms. But as she did so, they brushed up against her and cut her further, and running through them kicked out the multitudes of petals already on the ground, forcing them to cut her as well. Ken was caught up in a torrent of cherry blossoms made by her own doing, and yelled in pain due to all the cuts that were piling up all over her face and body. In the real world, however, there was nothing happening, at least not on the scale of things from Ken's point of view. Sakura had actually been in the trees though, and she had been intentionally forcing leaves to fall to match the activation of her genjutsu that seemed to be working beautifully.
Cherry Blossom Razor Storm.
Now it's time to finish, Sakura said to herself before jumping down from her perch and landing directly on top of Ken, knocking her unconscious.
Ow, next time I need a better finish.
She muttered to herself, rubbing her backside after her fall. Getting up and looking down at Ken, Sakura poked at her limp body with her foot before walking away.
Thanks for the training, Kakashi-sensei,
she said quietly to herself.
Winner of match 1, Haruno Sakura.
Sakura smiled brightly and waved to the crowd while holding her wounds from Ken's weaponry. A rather modest celebration, though in their head it was a different story.
Hell yeah, I totally kicked that bitch's ass. I know Sasuke-kun had to see that.
Wow, Asuma said, sitting in the stands beside Kakashi. Didn't see that coming. Yep, Kakashi replied with an eye smile at her performance. She'd taken a few wounds, but she could get that patch right up. Just needed a little push. A push and some genjutsu theory, and a living practice dummy. Still in the vicinity though, sitting right by both Lee Joni, Guy was still there, and he was even more enthusiastic than Kakashi seemed to be about things.
Kakashi, your hands-on teaching of your students reminiscent of my own manly education style. I can't wait to see what other things you taught them for the exams.
Kakashi just kept looking down at the field for several more seconds before turning towards Guy. I'm sorry, did you say something?
Damn you and your hip attitude, Kakashi!
Guy exclaimed in a grandiose manner, disturbing the other spectators enough to get popcorn thrown at him. He didn't seem to respond too much, instead focusing on Kakashi.
Our competition this time will be between our students! Whoever has their students advance furthest wins!
He neglected to remember the fact that there was already sort of a standing bet going on between the Leaf Jonin already over the exact same thing. Asuma just stared at Guy before shaking his head as he put a cigarette in his mouth.
God damn, man. I would just love to live in your world for just 3 hours or so. I don't think I'd get much done, but I don't think I'd care too much either.
On the field, Sakura was given rest to allow her to patch herself up, since no medical treatment could be given to active competitors. Thus, Sasuke walked down for the next fight, this time facing off against Dosu in the usual starting place of the Zen Garden.
Sorry about this. Nothing personal. It's just that we have to kill you and yours. You in particular, Uchiha Sasuke.
A usual smirk of amusement came from Sasuke.
Well, this is embarrassing. You seem to know who I am, and I don't have a clue who you are. My name is... I never said I care to find out.
Sasuke interrupted in an attempt to infuriate his opponent prior to the battle at hand.
I just said that it was embarrassing that I don't know who you are. Mostly for you, but I guess it really doesn't matter though.
He set himself in his combat stance in preparation for the start.
Ken let her guard down and underestimated your teammate,
Dosu said, narrowing a single visible eye at Sasuke.
That won't happen again with you. I guarantee you'll remember my name, since it's the last thing you'll ever hear.
Match 2, Uchiha Sasuke of the Leaf versus Kanuta Dosu of the Sound.
Jade shouted, getting everyone's attention. Sasuke was more or less an attraction to the event off of name value alone. Just calling out his name got a massive cheers from the people.
Begin!
Wasting no time at all, Sasuke and Dosu rushed at each other head on without hesitation. Sasuke moved to strike first, but stopped himself and instead jumped back when from one of Dosu's long sleeves he revealed a metal gauntlet with pores throughout it on his right arm and attempted to punch him. Sasuke felt a strange ringing in his ears that made him feel slightly lightheaded, but found no reason for it. Literally nothing had happened in that exchange. Dosu seemed to smile under his bandages once he saw Sasuke activate his 2-Tomo Sharingan to continue the fight. He held up his gauntleted arm and beckoned Sasuke forward as if asking him to come attack again. In response, Sasuke threw a kunai that Dosu blocked with a gauntlet before the Sound Genin rushed forward to take Sasuke down. He had his right arm cocked back and ready to attack again before he even got close to Sasuke, something that the young Uchiha saw in slow motion due to his Kage Genkai. In response to Dosu's direct attack, Sasuke retreated back away from Dosu and jumped onto one of the elevated meditation rocks in the Zen Garden, watching intently as Dosu jumped at him to attempt another attack. Sasuke didn't even let him get close before jumping off the rock and over Dosu.
Another direct attack. He really seems to want to fight me with taijutsu.
Even as he thought this, Sasuke was steadily getting a headache, and he simply couldn't comprehend why. That is until he got a good glimpse of Dosu's right arm. He had been intentionally swinging it wantonly during his sprint up to Sasuke, and even when Sasuke jumped from his perch on the rock, he still went through with his punch. Sasuke didn't know why until he noticed a faint glow with his heightened eyesight and perception. It was chakra directed through the gauntlet, and it was causing this blasted headache. What a subtle attack. He hadn't even gotten close to hitting Sasuke yet, and even then, he had an increasingly pulsing headache that was steadily getting worse. So that was why after he dodged Dosu's first punch, he felt like crap inexplicably. Whatever that arm of his was doing, Sasuke wanted no close range part of it, and luckily, he didn't have to fight like that. Dosu crouched atop the rock that Sasuke had just jumped off of to avoid him once again.
Is this all that the almighty Uchiha clan is capable of? The Leaf really is a soft village after all. This is what they consider to be a genius shinobi.
Sasuke said with a smirk, not letting the jab get to him, as if he'd fight on his opponent's terms just because of a reason like that.
That arm of yours really is interesting. Too bad you can't actually get close enough to do anything useful with it.
Dosu stood from his crouch, seemingly accepting Sasuke's challenge.
We'll see about that.
He dropped down the backside of the rock out of Sasuke's sight. But even though Dosu moved quickly, concealing his movements as he rushed from rock to rock for cover, Sasuke was able to see and keep track of him.
So you want to play whack-a-mole?
Sasuke said to no one in particular, though it was directed at Dosu.
Fine, let's play.
Sasuke jumped atop a rock and brandished a kunai. At the first hint of seeing Dosu, he threw his weapon. Dosu saw the weapon coming and lifted his gauntlet to block his head, but it landed sticking itself in the rock he was about to take cover behind. He averted his path and headed the other way to disrupt Sasuke's tracking of his movements. Dosu wasn't nearly fast enough for Sasuke's body to be unable to keep up with him though. He had been getting beaten up by Hatake Kakashi for an entire month.
Not even close to getting away from me. You aren't going to get even close. Cover or move behind or not.
Sasuke immediately branched a Fuma Shuriken to go with the rest of the kunai he had in his hands to bombard Dosu with.
Let's see you dodge this!
In one move, he threw them all in a widespread manner the moment Dosu emerged from behind cover once more. The sound of metal flying through the air filled Dosu's ears.
You'll never touch me with any of that.
He yelled as he jumped onto a rock to avoid the weaponry. Over a dozen kunai and shuriken littered the rocks, filling the Zen garden, and like Dosu said, none of it had ever touched him.
I can hear the trajectory of your projectiles. I can judge the proper way to dodge them. You'll never touch me with a shuriken,
he said before jumping back down into the rock pit, planning to finish closing the distance on Sasuke.
What is this?
Until he realized the entire area surrounding the rock he had been on was tangled in ninja wire, making the area look like the nest of a metal spider or something. Looking up at Sasuke on his own rock, he saw a wire trailing from his mouth while he'd been finishing up a chain of hand seals.
Dragon Fire Jutsu!
Fire flew from Sasuke's mouth along his ninja wire and turned it into a screaming metal death trap. Knowing that he was trapped while in there, and not wanting to find himself completely trapped in what was to be the equivalent of a stone oven, Dosu jumped back onto the rock that was the center of the wire detention as the fire blazed around the rock. He needed to find a way out because the rock was rapidly heating up. He wouldn't be safe there for long. Sasuke knew he would get him with the jutsu, or he would trap him up on the rock in the open, which would eventually catch fire and finish Dosu. Either way, he was easy pickings for what would be next. Give up, Sasuke warned as embers floated through the air, enhancing a rather treacherous appearance that had initially been given by the orange glow of the flames.
Sasuke-kun is so cool!
Both Ino and Sakura shouted as it looked like Sasuke had his win in hand. Naruto, on the other hand, leaned against the railing.
Come on, I'm cool too. I chucked that fucking machete through a barrier and beat 2 guys at once with brute force and wind chakra. Nobody said anything about that.
Shikamaru placed a hand on his shoulder.
I told you already, Naruto. Guys like us are just designed to be uncool. You can't be standing in the middle of a raging fire on the cool scale. It's visually magnificent, and airheads love it.
He said, pointing at Sakura and Ino, who were still gushing over Sasuke's tactic.
You find a way to make wind chakra look cool, and I'll find a way to make a creepy shadow look cool. Then maybe guys like us will have a chance.
Choji put a hand on Naruto's other shoulder.
You get used to it, Naruto. Trust me.
He's not that cool,
Naruto insisted.
I mean, he's looking at the explosion. Cool guys don't look at their own explosions.
Technically, it's an inferno, not an explosion.
Shikamaru said it with Choji nodding in agreement.
Shut up with your logic and correct definitions of words.
Naruto wasn't going to let something like common sense and actuality mess up his argument.
Hey!
Sakura said, turning away from the field towards Naruto and Shikamaru as their senses had picked up something rather late.
Did you just call us airheads?
Ino seemed to then pick up on that as well, and looked equally upset. Shikamaru looked over at her impassively before looking back at the field as if he hadn't been in a conversation beforehand.
Hey look, Sasuke's going to finish it.
That was all it took to get Ino and Sakura's attention back onto the field.
Airheads.
On the field. At this point, Dosu's common sense was crying out for him to give up, but it was his slated mission. It was the mission of his entire team. He was supposed to kill Sasuke Uchiha. Hidden Sound Village Ninja did not fail their mission. There was simply no room and no place for it. That was why Team Dosu were the only Genin sent from the Sound for the exams, because they were supposed to be the only ones necessary. They were the only ones sent to represent the Hidden Sound as a means of showing strength. Even the metal on his gauntlet was heating up enough to burn at the touch now. He couldn't stay on this rock much longer, or he'd just catch a blaze anyway and die soon, once the flames grew high and hot enough.
Don't do it,
Sasuke said, making hand seals and stopping on the tiger seals he charged up the chakra needed for his next jutsu, once he saw the subtle shift of Dosu's body.
You'll never make it to safety. You'll never even get close. Just give up.
He had trapped him. Sasuke didn't even want to actually follow up, because unless Dosu quit there was only one feasible way the fight was going to end.
If I give up or lose without taking your head, I fail,
Dosu said lowly, taking a few steps backwards.
If my team loses to all of you, then we fail and our village looks weak. If we fail a mission given to us as important by our Otokage, then we're dead anyway. So we aren't going to be giving up by choice.
His foot shifted back as if he were preparing to move forward.
Sorry. I'm telling you, if you move, let's see if your Sharingan can predict sound.
I'm not joking.
Neither was I. Sorry.
With that, Dosu ran forward and jumped off his death trap towards Sasuke, the only other rock he could have possibly reached from his position. His arm set to utilize the abilities of his gauntlet if he got close enough to do so. He didn't.
Fire style! Great fireball jutsu!
Sasuke didn't hold back and fired directly at Dosu, hitting him in midair and catching his body ablaze as the fireball stopped him while in flight. He then proceeded to drop down to the fire created by Sasuke's previous jutsu that had trapped Dosu, and from that point, all Sasuke could do was stare into the flames of his own creation, before snapping out of what he had just done. He turned around and jumped down the clear side of his rock that was left untouched so that he could leave it, and simply walked away while the proctors headed over to put the fire out. There was no reason for it to be like that. If Dosu had quit, then the proctors could have put the fire out and gotten him away.
That was his mission,
Sasuke said to himself, trying to reason why Dosu attacked him in the end when there was no logical reason behind it, or a way that could have worked.
And he put his life on the line to take mine.
Winner of match 3, Uchiha Sasuke.
Shikamaru, Naruto, and Choji stared over the remnants of Sasuke's fight with Dosu without flinching. They were ninja, and death was a part of their job description, and Naruto and Shikamaru had killed in the past before as well.
Naruto,
Shikamaru said plainly. Yeah, Shikamaru? Naruto replied evenly. Shikamaru rubbed his temple as the proctors put out the fire in the Zen garden.
I know you're not really one to surrender or quit in the middle of fights or anything like that, but if you're ever stuck in an isolated rock in the middle of a raging fire, and you don't have a way out, and surrendering is an option, you'd better do it, or I'll drag you back from hell somehow to smack the stupid out of you.
Got it, Naruto said in full understanding. They then looked over at Zaku, who hurriedly walked down for his fight.
Why didn't he stop the fight for his friend? That didn't have to happen.
Choji could tell what Naruto was thinking as he watched Zaku descend the stairs towards the entrance tunnel.
Don't worry,
he said, getting Naruto and Shikamaru to look at him.
I'll ask him that myself right now.
He then left to follow behind Zaku to meet up with Sasuke to watch out for the next fight. Elsewhere in the viewing area, Gaara's eyes were locked on the charred remnants of Dosu as the proctors tried to keep it from view of the audience and tried to get it out quickly. Tamati and Kankuro could feel the bloodlust around the young man, rising backed off to give him some space. On the field, after a rather short talk between teammates, Sasuke relinquished the fight with Zaku to Choji. It hadn't even taken that much convincing in order to do so. And so, Choji faced off against Zaku on the barren, mountain-based side of the field instead of the usually chosen no-true starting place of the Zen Garden for obvious reasons. Choji stared at Zaku, who even in the situation he was in, looked back at him with a smirk on his face.
I don't understand why you didn't throw in the towel for your teammate just now,
Choji said.
You had to know he wasn't going to get out of that mess.
Zaku let out a cruel-sounding laugh.
Dosu was the one that wanted to fight Uchiha. He knew what the score was. It's our mission to kill Sasuke during these exams. At least that's what I'm gonna do. And once I win he and finish off the rest of the round, I'll just keep on winning till I reach that other Leaf rookie team that advanced earlier. Apparently if I kill them, there's a nice little prize in it for me as well.
He was talking about Shikamaru's team. This guy didn't just want to kill him or Sasuke. He wanted to kill Shikamaru if he got the chance.
You want to kill my friends?
Choji said with an edge to his voice.
Oh, so Fat Boy can hear me after all. I thought that all that blubber of yours might be clogging your ears too.
Zaku taunted cruelly, setting himself in a fighting stance to prepare for the start. Choji's frame stiffened at the insult.
What did you just say?
You heard me,
Zaku said.
You're so fat I'm surprised you're not leaving footprints in the rock.
Choji didn't verbally respond to that jab. His eyes were merely set on the ground so that Zaku couldn't see them.
Start the match.
Genma looked over at the younger Leaf Shinobi and shifted the Senbon around his mouth before shrugging and looking at Zaku. Are you ready?
Oh yeah,
Zaku said, cracking his neck to the side. Genma nodded and began the announcement.
Match 3, Akimichi Choji of...
Start the damn fight already!
Begin!
The Leaf-born proctor said suddenly after Choji's angry outburst before getting the hell out of the way. There was no way he was staying near this battle if he didn't have to.
Multi-size jutsu!
Choji's body ballooned outward to a rounded and expanded appearance to the abdomen that Zaku took a step back at seeing.
Now you're dead, you bastard! Stop me if you can!
He then tucked his limbs and head inside of his clothes to give himself a massive ball-shaped appearance.
Holy crap!
Zaku exclaimed, taking a jump back away from Choji at the sight of him.
What the hell is that? Human bullet tank!
Choji's ball form began to roll in place, picking up momentum before it moved forward towards Zaku with the intent of running him over and squishing him.
You've gotta be kidding me!
Zaku growled to himself at the sight of the incoming Choji.
There's no way I'm going down like that!
He put his arms straight out to reveal hollow tubes open through his palms.
Decapitating airwaves!
From the tubes in his arms, a harsh blast of air came out in the struggle to stop Choji in his tracks.
You can't beat my airwaves!
Though he said that, he seemed to be having one hell of a time holding Choji back from smashing him, even with air from his tube stopping him. Still, it gave him opportunity to dive out of the way and avoid being ran over.
Is that the best you got?
Zaku taunted as the ball rolled away from him and didn't turn back around.
Are you running? I don't blame you, fatso!
Despite the insult, Choji just kept rolling on away, not even bothering to turn back around towards Zaku. Feeling triumphant, Zaku smirked and figured that he wasn't able to see or hear anything while in that form, and proceeded to chase after him to finish him when given the chance. What he didn't seem to realize or notice that Choji had, however, was that the barren, rocky area they had chosen to fight in was sloped and uneven in many places with hills, craters, and all kinds of things. And against the wall that was at the end of the field, the terrain turned into something of a makeshift ramp against it. A ramp that Choji rolled himself up once he reached as far as he could go. Then he rolled back down in the exact opposite direction. Now, Zaku could barely stop Choji when he started from a dead stop on flat ground. How would he fare now that Choji had been rolling for quite some time and had even gotten a boost from rolling himself down a ramp on very uneven ground? It was just simple physics. Hey, spending 6 months on the team with Sakura and spending years and years hanging out with Shikamaru had to rub off somehow. So now, coming with at least 3 times the momentum, Choji flew right at Zaku, who stopped in his track once he saw the ball roll up the side of the wall and right back down coming towards him.
Block this!
Choji shouted mid-roll. Try Zaku did, firing up his air tubes for a blast that was at least twice as strong.
Extreme decapitating airwaves!
But a blast twice as strong just wasn't enough for what was at least 3 times the original force of Choji's own jutsu. Thus, it did not stop the rolling this time around, and Choji rolled right over him, smashing Zaku into the ground and even staying on him for an extra moment to spin his wheels, so to speak, pulverizing the rock with his own spinning before rolling off of Zaku. Genma immediately headed over to where Zaku got hit and looked at the groaning, broken body of Zaku that was still alive, but he sure as hell wouldn't be getting back up.
Winner of match 3, Akimichi Choji, Haruno Sakura, Uchiha Sasuke, and Akimichi Choji advance to the next round.
In the competitor's box, Shikamaru let out a chuckle as the crowd cheered for the victorious Team 7.
That guy more or less dug his own grave right from the start.
Nearby, Sakura nodded with an awkward smile on her face.
Yeah, it kinda didn't take anyone on the team long to figure out that calling Choji fat wasn't really the smartest thing to do.
She turned back to the field where they had managed to peel Zaku off the ground and pull him onto a gurney.
Still, that was kinda violent, wasn't it?
Naruto gave Sakura a deadpan stare and pointed over at Sasuke.
Sakura-chan, he just set a living human being on fire, and you're talking about the way Choji wanna be violent? And if you say that's different, you're full of crap, Budo-chan. Stop calling me that.
Ino seethed out through clenched teeth while Sakura had to, if nothing else, giggle at hearing someone else making fun of the meaning behind Ino's name. As she kept laughing, Sakura couldn't imagine anyone on her own team calling her the nickname that Ino usually lambasted her with.
I can't believe your own teammate calls you that.
She managed to get out between her own laughter. Her laughing stopped, however, once Gaara and his teammates walked past her on their way to the stairs to enter the field for their turn. All of them noticed that unlike his siblings that didn't pay any of them any mind, Gaara made direct eye contact with Naruto as he passed, if only for a moment, and the feeling of the temperature of the room dropping left once Gaara and his team exited to head to the field. Kabuto saw this and walked over from his own team to talk to the rookies.
Wow, even I felt that.
He looked at Naruto.
What did you do to make that guy so mad?
The older Genin inquired. Naruto didn't know how to respond other than the only answer he'd come up with.
I got in his way, I guess.
He replied vacantly, still looking at the stairwell Gaara had descended even though he was no longer there.
I kinda had a run-in with him during the last part of the exam.
Really?
Kabuto said before laughing nervously.
Well, my team is probably going to have to fight him next round, so did you get anything out of his skill set?
Sand, Naruto said. Lots and lots of sand. Stay the hell away from it. A frown came across the silver-haired, bespectacled young man. That's it? You don't have any real advice to help anyone fight him.
Well, what are your abilities then? What can you and your team do?
Naruto asked Kabuto in return.
I can't tell you how to fight him if I don't know how you fight.
A smile then came to Kabuto's face.
That sounds like fishing to me.
But us? We're nothing special, he said in a modest, pleasant fashion. Oh, Naruto said understanding before turning to the field to watch the fight. That's easy then. Whether he knew it or not, everyone including Neji and Team Gaia as well as Fu and Doribo were listening to him. You run, Naruto said without hesitation. You run or you quit. That's it? Kabuto asked in disbelief. You're kidding, right?
Well, you can die too.
Was the dry response from Naruto.
That's always an option.
He can't harm Fu, Dorobo said in an opinionated manner, though said girl seemed to be listening to what Naruto had to actually say. Sand. That's all he has? Neji scoffed over the team guy.
Don't try to offload your own fears onto the rest of us. A few of us aren't outright failures like some.
Tenten and Lee looked at Neji in an almost disgusted manner and shook their heads. That managed to get an angry look from Naruto directed at Neji, though he just let it drop. Neji was ignorant and he didn't know what that Dorobo guy's problem was, thinking that Fu could just beat anyone because she was a Jinchuriki.
I don't really care what you think.
On the field, Gaara, Tamari, and Kankuro stood across from the team from Rain that had made it to the finals. The similarly dressed Oboro, Mubui, and Kage, all with their breathing apparatuses, waited at the ready.
Tails.
Tekka commented on the preceding coin flip.
Sand team chooses.
Before anyone could even take a chance to think about it, Gaara spoke up.
Team battle,
he said plainly, surprising his own team that expected him to rather fight alone. Not willing to question Gaara due to knowing firsthand what Gaara was like, having cleaned up a few of his messes in the sand, Sakura merely backed out of the way, far out of the way, all the way out of the Zen Garden.
Poor bastards. Why did they pick this terrain to start in? Just for the sake of a face-off?
A sandy area with rocks littering the vicinity. Not the best of choices to be made in his opinion and experience.
First round match, one team battle only. Gaara, Tamari, and Kankuro of the Sand versus Oboro, Muburi, and Kage of the Rain. Begin!
Tamari grabbed the large fan from her back, and Kankuro took the bandage bundle from his and prepared to fight, but Gaara's voice stopped him.
No, just stay out of my way,
he said as the cork on his large gourd of sand popped off the top of it. Are you sure, Gaara? Kankuro asked tentatively. He involuntarily took a step back when the sand began to filter out of Gaara's gourd.
Leave,
Gaara reiterated with more of an edge this time to get the point across.
or I'll kill you too. I don't need either of you to finish the exams at this point. I could have killed either of you at any time after the second exam. You're in my way.
Kankuro growled to himself, but Tamari put a hand on his shoulder and shook her head, choosing to listen to Gaara and get the hell out of the way.
You think you can just leave?
Oboro said, his voice restricted by his breathing apparatus.
Sorry, but you're not that lucky.
As he said that, multiple eerie black forms of the Rain Team came from the surrounding rocks and even rose from the ground all throughout the Zen Garden.
You're staying right here where we want you, surrounded.
That statement was responded to by Tamari when she took her fan and let loose a swing of it that cut a path through the black copies, making them look like inky illusions as she and Kankuro just kept on walking their way out of the Zen Garden.
We're not leaving because of you.
We're leaving because of him, Kankuro said, jerking his head back towards the guard before continuing on after Tamari. You guys should just quit now while you're ahead. Kage scoffed, his voice also distorted by his breathing apparatus.
You think only one of you can beat all three of us?
Kunai from different angles flew at Gaara's unmoving form, only to be stopped harmlessly by a shield of sand holding them in place before they dropped uselessly. Gaara's response was the entire amount of the sands in the Zen Garden moving around in a torrent. In the midst of all this, Gaara stood there calmly in the center with his arms crossed and an emotionless expression on his face.
You're annoying me,
he said, as the sand settled to reveal he himself was standing all alone in the area. The entire place was still as the audience just watched and waited for something. An ambush on Gaara's person? Something. They weren't let down, as this time, a multitude of more exact copies of Team Oboro emerged, wearing their actual clothes and looking just like them.
Clones,
Gaara said in his gravelly voice.
I hate clones.
More sand began to rush about dangerously, smashing about and stripping the surfaces off the rocks in the Zen Garden, but not doing any damage to the clones even to dispel them, nor were there any cries of pain or alarm. But they had never left the Zen Garden. If they had, then Kankuro or Tamari would have done something. Gaara looked around the entire battlefield, ignoring the largely useless clones of theirs that weren't doing a thing but standing around. No sign of them anywhere. That really only left one place for them to be, and they wouldn't have tried it at a distance with their useless clones littering the immediate area. Thus, Gaara kneeled down and placed his hand on the ground, burying it into the sand. He seemed to be patiently fishing for something, and seemed to find it after not too long.
Sand binding coffin.
With that being said, Gaara pulled his hand out of the sand, and shortly thereafter, 3 rain ninja emerged from the ground, being lifted into the air, suspended there by sand entirely encasing their bodies.
You're from the village of Rain, correct?
They didn't respond to Gaara's question, as they were busy wondering what the hell was happening and why they couldn't get free despite their attempts to struggle. It was impossible for them. This suited Gaara just fine, however, because the question had been rhetorical, and he hadn't necessarily cared one way or the other if they had answered. He instead lifted his arm into the air with his hands held wide open.
Let's make you feel at home,
he said darkly before making a tight fist with his outstretched hand.
Sand Waterfall Funeral!
And that was it. The sand imploded and crushed all of Team Obero. Much like the name of Gaara's second chaining technique, the blood fell from the sky and showered the Zen garden with gore. The crowd collectively began to freak out at Gaara's one-man decimation of an entire team as he filtered his sand back into his gourd and calmly walked away. Over with the proctors, Jay grabbed Sekka by the front of his clothing looking angry.
You knew this was gonna happen, didn't you?
He accused, seeing the way that Sekka had been treating Gaara since being asked to oversee the beginning of the fight. If one had the audacity to call it that.
Why didn't you tell us this was gonna happen?
There was nothing we could do,
Sekka said in a calm manner. The medic ninja yanked himself from the bald clown ninja's grasp as he did so.
You couldn't stop Gaara even if you had known what would happen. It wouldn't have made a difference. It's not a regular Guinea. He's not even a regular person. What is he then?
Genma asked, still not particularly over the rather graphic depths of an entire Genin squad just now.
Just like that girl from the waterfall, only 10 times worse. He's Sand's nightmare,
Sekka said, shaking his head.
He's our Jinchuriki.
He moved away from his fellow proctors to announce the results that were clear for all to see.
The winners of the team battle and advancing on to the next round, Gaara, Tamati, and Kagero of the Sand.
Not even polite applause was given. And Genma could now officially say once and for all to everyone that still had their problems with Naruto that Leaf had absolutely nothing to complain about when it came to Naruto being the Jinchuriki, if that was what the other villages had to deal with their Genin Jinchuriki.
I hope everyone watching this at home figures that out. For God's sake, that was just...
Everyone in the competitor stand that had just borne witness to the demise of the Rain Genin had no words for what they had just seen. The way Sasuke killed Dosu in the last round was one thing. What Gaara had done was something else completely. The only one there that wasn't surprised was the only person there that had actually experienced it firsthand before. Naruto let out a sigh to disguise the discomfort he felt, evident by how tight his hands were clutching the railing. He had already seen what Gaara, Tamati, and Kankuro could do when his clones were at them at the caves. But having Gaara's sand defeat actual people was something else altogether.
I knew that was gonna happen. I didn't think there'd be so much blood, though.
He said to himself quietly.
Damn it, we still haven't seen anything that we can really take advantage of.
Shikamaru's mind was racing, though.
Okay, he doesn't move, and he doesn't like to have his team anywhere around him, ever. And we are staying right the hell out of that sand trap garden if I had to pin our feet to the ground somewhere else. We need more.
Next, it was Team Kabuto's turn to fight the team of Older Mist Ninja. They were already on the field, ready to go.
I hope whoever wins can push the hell out of them next round.
The battle was mostly underwhelming thus far, more of a dogfight than most of the other matches that had been fought. But there wasn't much to see other than the guy that could stretch his body and the guy that could absorb chakra on Kabuto's team. Kabuto himself seemed to be really good at dodging attacks and quite alright at taijutsu. And as they took the win, they got their round of applause. But Shikamaru wasn't given much confidence after the first showcase that next round would be any tougher for the team from the Hidden Sand. A pretty boring series of one-on-one fights led to conversation to break out again prior to the 30-minute break between rounds. Though just like before, there was no one approaching the Sand team or Waterfall's team, who finally got their third wheel Hoyuki back from the medical bay. This led to Naruto actually taking a minute to go out and get himself something to drink due to thirst. Also to give himself a minute to smoke a cigarette. He felt he deserved one after round 1, and he needed one after seeing Gaara obliterate those other Genin. He took long enough to finish one off before stepping on the butt of it on his way back to the viewing balcony. There, he found Fu sitting on the stairwell by herself, and stopped walking, standing to her side less than 15 feet away. He felt like walking back to the viewing area was the smartest move at the time, but for the life of him, he just couldn't bring himself to do it. From the angle he was standing at, he could see her eyes. She didn't seem nearly as angry or irritated as she did when she was around people. As a matter of fact, she seemed to like being by herself. He could also tell by the look of her eyes that they were just like his used to be. Damn it, he was gonna get killed in a stairwell between rounds. Who dies during the intermission? That would be the lamest thing conceivable. Well, at least being a nice guy would only wind up with him dying alone. Worst case scenario. Not Shikamaru or Ino this time. Maybe they'd promote him posthumously. Nah, they'd call his trying to talk to Fu by himself a tactical fault, and then he'd never get the sweet flak jacket, even if he otherwise would have gotten it laid on his grave. Hey, Naruto said, noticing Fu's eyes immediately dart to the side towards him, allowing her to see him through the handrail set up on the stairs she was sitting on. What are you doing out here?
I'm not staying in that room with all those people just to watch a shitty fight between people I'm never going to face.
Fu said, cutting him off tersely as she narrowed her eyes at him.
Now what are you doing out here?
He was tempted to mouth off and say that technically he was supposed to fight next again once the intermission was over, but making an enemy out of another fellow Jinchuriki was not high on his list of things to do in these exams. Just taking a walk to clear my head. Kind of like you, I guess. Mind if I sit down? Yes, Fu said, lifting her hand and making a fist, and cracking her knuckle just for the motion of doing so.
I do mind. Now beat it, kid, before you wear out what little welcome you had, and I beat you.
There was a low and underlying killing intent coming from Fu, but when Naruto took a step back, it lessened slightly. I don't want to fight. Yet, anyway. Not until I win the next round. he said as he leaned against the wall in the hallway. I heard what that guy said. Your teammate? Fu's eyes turned away from Naruto to look down the stairs with the reminder of her outing as a Jinchuriki last round.
So what? All that means is that more people I've never met are gonna think I'm a monster, just like always.
You're not a monster, Naruto argued in return.
What would you know about it?
She snapped in return, looking at her hands.
You saw what I did out there to the other team from the Leaf, and you're telling me you don't want payback? You're telling me you don't think I'm a monster? Every single time I've ever touched someone since I was a little girl, I've hurt them. I break things, and I break people without even trying to. So don't give me that crap, cause you don't even know, kid.
A frown came over Naruto's face before he said his next bit. Well, you can touch me. I'm pretty sure I won't break. Fu let out a humorless laugh and placed her hand on the metal railing with an oddly sweet smile on her face.
Well, come over here and shake my hand, she said pleasantly.
She had said to come over. Naruto was pretty sure if she was trying to trap him, he could evade an attack easily enough. Thus, he took her up on the offer and walked over. The closer he got, the more strained the smile on Fu's face became, before he finally heard a strange noise that sounded like metal groaning.
And stop right there.
Fu said in a strained voice once Naruto got within 5 feet of her. She let go of the metal railing, and Naruto's eyes looked towards it to see that her grip had crushed it.
You still want to shake my hand? How about give me a hug? Are you still sure you won't break?
The sarcasm in her speech was rampant, getting Naruto to look at her through squinted eyes. I was serious, you know.
It doesn't matter if you were or not,
Fu said.
You think you're the first person that tried to be all friendly to get me to let my guard down? You're not. The academy teachers, the caretakers, my classmates, so many of them tried to make me think they were my friends, and when they got close enough, they would attack me. They'd say that my abilities with the Seven Tails powers were too weak, and report it to the village leader.
No one had ever treated Naruto like that when he was a kid. People basically treated him like a leper and went out of their way to stay away from him. But he wasn't attacked by his fellow villagers, or falsely befriended. She was basically telling him that she was befriended just so others could get close enough to force her to activate her abilities to defeat you.
That's horrible. Who does that?
Technically, Jiraiya did, but that was just one person, and he apologized afterward. Fu was talking about multiple people using spontaneous attacks to test her skill with their ability, and they didn't seem to care. Ignoring him, Fu then punched the railing, bending it thoroughly from the force she used.
So no, I learned that no one ever wants to be around me without causing me some kind of harm. Anyone willing to stick around me is just biding their time to attack me. So you can shake my hand, and I'll turn your bones into powder. You can hug me too if you want to, but I'll snap your spine like a stick. You'll wait until I drop my guard at any moment, and you'll turn on me. You're my enemy, remember? So slay the monster, kill me, and I bet they'll just drop a promotion in your lap out of gratitude.
Will you stop saying you're a monster?
Why does it matter to you?
Because if that stupid thing inside of you makes you a monster, then I'm one too! Naruto yelled back at her, taking great care not to step forward to set her off any further. Still, he was going to get his damn point across one way or another. Fu's eyes widened at him before rolling in distrust. Seeing he had to prove it, Naruto backed up and drew his machete, putting Fu on instant alert. He merely dragged the blade of his machete across his hand to draw blood, and she did again. He wiped the blood on his pants to show Fu the light wound. Watching the cut heal visibly right before her eyes set Fu's doubts nearly nothing. No normal person healed like that.
Yeah,
Naruto said, fishing some medical wrap out of his supply pouch that he began to wrap around his hand.
And I know I'm not a monster, neither are you.
And I'm gonna prove that to you and everyone one way or another. Having spoken his mind to Fu, Naruto walked past her to head back to the viewing area to link up with his team before the next round began. Once he went further down the hall, he found Sasuke leaning against a wall.
So what was that all about, Dobe? I heard the echo of you yelling.
How much of that did you hear? Naruto asked.
None of it.
Sasuke replied honestly.
But I'm fighting her next. I was just wondering if you told her anything about us to help her team win in case you were scared of taking me on again.
He finished with a smirk.
Because you should be. It won't be as even as it was last time.
I agree,
Naruto said with a challenging grin.
I'm gonna beat you way easier this time. We all know I was winning that last fight.
In your dreams, Dobe.
Sasuke said with a scoff as they began walking back to the waiting area together.
I must have kicked you in the head too hard the last time.
Before Naruto could open his mouth to offer up a sniping response, Gaara's voice stopped them both.
Uzumaki.
Both Leaf Guinea turned around to see Gaara standing in the low-lit hallway staring at them both.
I'm going to kill you. I just want you to know that. And unlike your friend Uchiha, I did hear what you said to the girl. And I want to tell you right now that we are monsters.
Sasuke looked ready to defend himself. He could tell something was off with Gaara the moment he first stood in his presence, and watching him crush 3 Genin into a bloody paste didn't really remedy that mindset any.
We're not friends, and what are you talking about?
Gaara's seafoam-colored eyes turned to Sasuke momentarily.
I wasn't talking to you. Shut up or I'll kill you too.
Sasuke bristled at the casual threat and turned his Sharingan on a response.
Come on and try, you psychotic little—
You're not a monster, Gaara, Naruto said, cutting off Sasuke from forcing the situation to escalate any further.
It's what's inside you that's the monster. Don't let yourself become what everyone thinks you are. Idiot, what are you doing?
Sasuke said, still defensive and with good reason to be so once the cork popped off Gaara's gourd, and sand started filtering out of it. Both of them knew full well what that was used for.
Stop trying to talk down the homicidal guy and think of something that will actually work. I don't feel like fighting him in a hallway.
It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks.
Gaara said as his sand slowly began to billow about.
If they believe I'm a monster, a demon, it's only because I am. From the moment I was born, I've killed. I took the life of the woman that brought me into this world. Ever since the age of 6, I've been killing assassins sent after me by my own father, the Kage, the one who had Ichibi no Shukaku implanted in me to make me the Sand's ultimate weapon.
His sand started to creep along the ground towards Naruto and Sasuke, who both drew up in case it became a fight.
Mother wants both of your blood right now. She's screaming for it.
I thought you just said your mother was dead. Sasuke said with the kunai drawn and at the ready for all the good it would probably do him.
This guy really is insane.
If it weren't enough for Sasuke, Gaara began talking to himself right there in front of them.
Please, mother, just wait. Wait a little bit longer. I promise you'll get more blood soon. Not here. This isn't the place to kill Uzumaki. This isn't the place to kill Uchiha. But I'll make them both pay. I promise. No one will make me disappear.
Both Naruto and Sasuke slowly began to back away towards the waiting area where Gaara kept muttering to himself and his mother, not even noticing them creeping away from him. What the fuck was that all about? Sasuke said once they got far enough away.
I don't know.
Naruto said, wiping a cold sweat from his face, once the tension from before had died down. He hadn't even known he'd been perspiring.
I don't think I'll be taking the stairs for the rest of the tournament, though. I think I'll just walk up and down the wall.
There was still 10 minutes left in the intermission. Even though the situation had faded out, Sasuke was well aware that he had missed a significant chunk of what the issue was with Naruto, Gaara, and even Fu. Why was Naruto out there talking to her in the first place? Gaara really had a monster suit inside of his body like Fu? And when we said that they were monsters, it didn't sound like he was simply referring to himself and Fu. It sounded like he was talking about Naruto as well.
Naruto has a monster in him too? That had to be what he was talking about. But Naruto isn't anything like one of them. No way.
Why couldn't things be simple and straightforward? They were supposed to be there for a promotion test, and now they were stuck surrounded by these Jinchuriki guys and people trying to kill them. Did most other Genin taking these exams have to deal with this stuff when they took them? It would have to be pretty hard to dredge up this much crazy and stick it all in one exam twice a year. End of chapter 25.